This is Casey Wolf introducing the new VCon panel. Listen to this! Listen to This features VCon guests reading snippets from some of their favorite works by other authors. We offer you here a few brief examples. This is Marie Ellis reading Eileen Kernaghan's Wild Talent, a novel of the supernatural. In the borders, the harvest will be in, and the turnips waiting to be lifted. There will be frost in the early mornings, mist trailing through the woods and over the shorn fields, the smell of wood smoke. And then, by mid-morning, the sun will burn away the haze and flood the hills with golden October light. But here in London, autumn is the season of sulphurous fogs that shroud the shops and houses, turn the streets into dim, smoky tunnels, and creep with sooty fingers over every threshold. At Lansdowne Road the gaslights burn all afternoon so that we can see to work, and outside the street is filled with swirling yellow mist. Though we are busy every day with last-minute work on the secret doctrine, HPB still keeps to her habit of Saturday at-homes, and yesterday Alexandra paid her first visit in weeks. When she rose to leave, the Countess suggested that she should take a cab, for the afternoon would soon be drawing in. With these terrible murders at Whitechapel, she said, it is not safe for any young woman to walk the streets alone. Alexandra, quite unworried, assured the Countess that she would venture nowhere near Whitechapel, but having spent her allowance on books and a new winter bonnet, she must pinch pennies by taking the train as far as Gower Street. And so I offered to walk with her the short distance to Notting Hill Gate Station. The fog had thickened, muffling sound and hiding the tops of the houses and trees. As the yellowish-grey gloom grew deeper, I said to Alexandra, surely it would be wiser for you to stay for dinner and spend the night at Lansdowne Road. But she laughed and shook her head. From all accounts, HBB's astral entities are so active at night they are likely to disturb my sleep. I have heard too many tales of mysterious midnight rappings and lamps that turn off and on without reason and icy Himalayan air blowing into people's bedrooms. I believe I will take my chances with the fog. Since Alexandra seemed unafraid, I made up my mind not to show my own anxiety, though the two of us were quite alone on the deserted street. I told myself that it was not yet mid-afternoon, and I chattered some nonsense or other to keep my spirits up. But how often the thing we fear most lies in wait until our attention is distracted. Just before we reached the station, there stepped from out of the fog a tall, cadaverous figure that blocked our way with outspread arms so that we could not easily pass. I had a quick, terrified impression of sunken eyes in a gaunt, unshaven face, lank hair escaping from under a dark cap, a long flapping coat of some indeterminate shade, and in one hand the glint of a knife-blade. I could think of nothing but those terrible stories of the Whitechapel fiend. My throat clenched, my knees threatened to give way. I clutched Alexandra's shoulder, unable to speak or catch my breath. "Give me your money," this apparition said, and Alexandra, who must have been no less terrified, answered in a steady voice, "I have only my train fare. Take that if you wish." And she reached into the pocket of her coat. I could see her hand trembling as she held out a shilling piece. He took the coin with a kind of grunt and then turned to me. "I have no money with me," I managed to say. It was the truth. "Rings! Pocket watch!" Dumb with fear, I could only shake my head, and I watched in silent horror as he raised the knife. I cannot say what happened next. I have no clear memory of it, only that something shifted within me, my terror turning to a mindless and unmindful rage. The air all at once was filled with flying pebbles, pieces of brick and broken cobblestones, as though some giant hand had scooped them up and flung them in blind fury at our attacker. I heard him cry out in pain, saw him throw up his arms to cover his head, then sink to his knees as bricks and stones and cobbles plummeted mercilessly down upon him. And then Alexandra seized me by the arm, and we fled headlong back down the street to Lansdowne Road. Hi, I'm Shocky Elise, and I'm going to read from Michael G. Coney's Pallahaxi Tide, a little-known work of genius. I was sitting on the stern thwart, holding the tiller, while Wolfe sat amidships, grasping the main sheet. We had reached the outer harbour and were running out of the shelter of the cliffs. The breeze was freshening, driving us briskly toward the lighthouse at the end of the breakwater. The water was a little choppy here, and every so often a wave slopped over the low gunwales. "Bail it out, then, Wolfe," I commanded, exerting my authority as skipper. He was fidgeting about nervously. "We don't have anything to bail with. It's only a few drops, anyway." "It's more than that. The boat's leaking. It's gushing in. Look!" As I shifted position, a river of icy water soaked my foot, and cold fear ran up my leg. We were sinking. The water was freezing cold. I looked frantically around for help. We were many paces from the nearest boat, doomed to death from exposure preceded by the terrible onset of insanity as the coldness of the water gradually chilled our bodies and froze our brains. Having faced the worst, I was able to devote my attention to more practical matters. "We'll never reach the breakwater," I said. To our left, the cliff loomed high and black. "Maybe we could paddle in there, out of the wind. Look, there's a beach. We could get ashore. It's not far." "What do we paddle with?" asked Wolfe helplessly. All the bombast was knocked out of him, and he looked suddenly shrunken, huddled on the center thwart, hugging himself and shivering as the water rose above his ankles. I could see the whites of his eyes. He stared wildly as a snow diver swooped past us and plunged below the surface. The boat rocked sluggishly. "We'll use the rudder. You get the sail down, and I'll unship the rudder." I twisted around and felt beneath the icy water for the nut securing the pintle. The boat rocked dangerously as Wolfe, without warning, flung himself on me from behind and smashed my face against the transom. I dragged myself away, fighting clear of something clammy and encumbering, receiving a sharp blow on the back of the head and finding Wolfe's crazed eyes staring directly into mine. The cold had got to him sooner than I'd expected. I pulled my arm free and hit him in the face as hard as I could. He grunted and backed off, scrabbling for the gunwale. As his weight shifted, I managed to knee him in the stomach. He gasped, and I saw the terror in his eyes as he hurled himself at me again, hitting out wildly, screeching like a seabird. I fell back again, half across the gunwale, averted my head to avoid his blows, and saw the long, black shape of a scavenger sliding through the water beneath us. I'll swear its cold eye dwelt on me as it passed about half a pace below the surface. I turned back, and Wolfe hit me again. I seized his arm and pulled, and we rolled grappling in the bottom of the boat. Eventually I found myself astride him. His struggles weakened as I gripped his throat and forced his head back towards the water, which had risen rapidly as we fought. "Drove!" he grunted. "Let me go, you freezer! Pull yourself together! There's nothing to be afraid of!" "Go to rags!" I held on, but I was less sure of myself. The mad look had died from his eyes, and suddenly I wondered if it had ever been there, or whether I had imagined it. "What did you attack me for, then?" "You attacked me, remember? You hit me in the face." "Only after you flung yourself at me." "I didn't fling myself at you. The sail came down with a rush, and I overbalanced. Then you went berserk." "What are you talking about?" I thought about it for a moment while Wolfe's desperate face stared up from the bottom boards and the water rose higher. It seemed there had been a misunderstanding. I released him, and he crawled back to his seat, and we eyed each other warily. The sail lay in a crumpled mass between us. The sight of the water rising around it got me moving again. "Try to unship the freezing rudder yourself," I said irritably. Thanks for listening to the Listen to This podcast. I hope we've enticed you to come to our panel at VCon this year, where you will encounter real live VCon guests reading short snips from some of their favorite speculative fiction. This is Casey Wolfe, signing off.